everyone, welcome back to Betsperts Golf 2023 Players Championship betting preview here with my friend Andy Molitor. Andy, how we doing, bud?
Good. It's a good week. It's a lot going on this week. Even if you throw out the XFL games, which I might, you still have the players. You have like 19 conference tournaments going on at one time. And I mean, I guess the NBA is happening. I'm cheering. I don't know if you're actually, I suppose you're a Celtics fan. Never mind.
It's actually the only team that on my Celtics. So, yeah, big time for you though. College hoops. College hoops is cranking up. We're going to 11 on college hoops.
And also, for anybody who remembers, I went to the Waste Management, and February and March. If something is the 10th of February and it's a Wednesday, then it's the 10th of March. It's also a Wednesday. So when I went to Waste Management, I booked a ticket to fly down. Then I booked a ticket to return. And that return flight was on, let's say, February 11th or whatever it was. Actually, you know what? It was the 10th, I think. It was Friday, February 10th. But I booked that ticket for Friday, March 10th. I didn't want to stay down there for over a month. So it's funny. I'm getting emails. I never did cancel it. It was cheaper just to buy another ticket. So now I'm getting emails about like, hey, it's almost time to check in. Hey, do you want to upgrade your seat? So maybe I just go to Scottsdale tomorrow because I already paid for the return flight. I feel like I'm losing money on this, but I think a Florida swing trip is in order one of these times. And you did do some golfing down at least further away from where we're at.
Yeah, got down 90 holes in 4 days is a lot of golf. 18, 36, and 18. And actually the body's holding up surprisingly well. I did not think it would, but it was a great time. I lost the cumulative. We all had, handicap adjusted scores. Had a complete, and I say this with nothing but respect, delusional, passionate data guy that was, traveled with a whiteboard that we put in like the main room. We had 3 connecting rooms. It was an 8-man trip. We would come in, do a blind draw post round to determine who your playing partner was. Lots of money at stake, closest to the pins, all those things. I drove it exceptionally well. It was a full Luke list week for me, Andy. I tee to green. It was pretty good. Off the tee, really good. I could not make anything putting wise, but hey, good to get out and golf, and definitely good to get the juices flowing to start the year. And it's actually a commemorative hat from the trip. It's an annual trip for us, so good times had by all, especially the winner of the trip. So
I'll get some rounds in here eventually. Although I did go to the sporting goods store the other day with my son. It's my birthday next month. So I just point at like either the golf section, and then you go to the grilling section and just point out like, hey, remember these things when mom takes you shopping, because these are some things that are cheaper than I want. So I'm getting ready for the season, but yeah, we're getting ready this is like the start of for the real season. Like you have the Sony, you have the bullshit before the Super Bowl. The MX and all that stuff is great. And the fact that we have elevated events obviously changes a lot about that part of the season. It used to be a much worse part of the season. But even with the elevated events, it's still, this is the players. You're a month away from the Masters. And then essentially you have every 4 to 5 weeks, you have a major, and then you end up in the playoffs. So like this 5-month stretch really kind of is it. And this has always been kind of the, the spot where it's like, hey, spring's here. The players, obviously we didn't have the elevated events before, so it's like, shit, and this is like our first really good field. Although it's been fun. I don't know. I can't actually say that the elevated events don't take away from this, because they do. Having 10 essentially players level fields outside of this will take away from this a little, but it still is like there's a little more prestige to winning this. For especially the top golfers who are trophy hunting and, have 15, 20, 30 wins on tour. Like this is a little more prestigious still than obviously winning like the Amex or something earlier in the season. So it still holds some gravitas there. And I think obviously it doesn't matter what what the purse was. You'd have everyone down here.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. I want to ask too, because we talked about like the Honda getting, kind of is stuck in the middle of all these elevated events, and now that we're kind of here, it feels like maybe this one's lost a little bit too. I do think your point is correct, though. Like at the end of the day, in terms of like mantle collecting, these guys stacking up trophies on their mantle, you want to have the golden guy. I think they're going away with the golden boy this year, whatever it is, but you want to have that on your mantle. So I do think it does mean a little bit more than say, a waste management, even though the purses are getting closer. It just is the thing that kind of sticks out is the fields. This used to be the place where we'd get everyone for the first time for the most part. And we've kind of had that. We've been spoiled for what's been going on with leading into this on the designated event side. But again, it is a very interesting track. I think it is one that brings everyone together. Pete Dye tracks do that. It is definitely positional golf. It does force you to avoid the water. The redesign a couple years ago, and actually the shift from May to March is also pretty drastic too, in terms of how this course plays a little bit differently. But really, anyone's on the table here. There's not like you can't really bomb and gouge this on purpose. And I think that makes it probably one of the more difficult courses and events to handicap because there's not one type of golfer. There's not one type of skill sets. I think we've seen historically that course history doesn't really matter here. And we've seen like even last year, like half of the top guys missed the cut. It's very, very much a wide open event.
Yeah. And yeah, let's talk about the kind of let's start with that. Let's start with the course and like what matters here. And you'll look and it's like, hey, off the tee really matters here. But it's not a driving contest. It's not a spot where, people are going to be able to rip it or even just shape longer shots with their drivers. There's a lot of, similar to last week where it's not just like forced layups, but it's forced like big layups and it's forced like you have to find your spot on the fairway here. And like there's a lot, obviously it's Florida still, we have plenty of water in play. You have plenty of, it's Pete Dye, so you have these long extensive bunkerings. Like there's a lot of trouble to get into. So it's tough to just look at off the tee numbers and use that rear facing, like how are you off the tee, because so much of that is going to come at courses where people are using their driving distance to gain strokes on the field. Like, hey, I'm Cam Young? Yeah, Cam Young. I'm trying to think of the right Cam. Like, I'm just going to bomb it. And if it, at courses like that, you're going to just pick up so many strokes gained on spots like that your off the tee numbers are going to look better. Whereas like, hey, that doesn't really translate here. Or we need to be digging down. And it's almost like Ron does, where he's building some of these, some of these weighted models by hand, taking into a bunch of things and looking at some of the context and pulling out maybe some of the stops that don't make sense to use as numbers for. But it is kind of total accuracy where it's like, not only finding the fairway, but the stuff that doesn't find the fairway, how is that doing? If you're looking at good drives gained and seeing like, are you able to find the green? That probably indicates that a lot of your stuff that didn't find the fairway was first cut or not in the water. Because if you hit your tee shot in the water, like the greens in regulation goes to, probably zero. And there's some par fives, I guess, where you could accidentally luck your way into something if it was shorter. But it is going to come down to a little bit of that. A huge part of this is going to be accuracy off the tee and just staying out of trouble. And it's funny too, because you'd think like, it's all connected. All the stats is like this, like a skeleton, because, it's not three putt avoidance, but just like opportunities gained. If you're doing the things that matter off the tee and you're finding yourself with, reasonable second shots, or you're a good, you're a good long irons player, there's going to be a tons of shot over 200 yards here, just with some long par fours and the par fives. Like if you're doing those things, the opportunities gained will happen. So it's funny because there is some double counting in everything you do here, but it was a little bit of a struggle for me to put a model together this week.
It is, and looking at notes from years past too, and trying to feel like, all right, what's super sticky? It's hard. It's harder than almost anywhere else. You do get into the double counting. That's okay. I think this is a week to go and like just strip it way back. I think there are always a couple different ways to build models and to build betting cards in terms of, do I really pick with like a singular skill set? I feel that I'm dialed in on what matters here, and I want all my guys to come from that bucket. Or do I count for the fact that I'm probably wrong somewhere, and I want to kind of like match different skill sets so that if this starts to play really well, or this matters more this week with how the weather, because the weather's always an issue here. We know we've seen some crazy winds at this event the last couple of years too that impact things. If I'm wrong, then I'm kind of covering my bases. I have some outs with guys that kind of profile this way versus the other way. So I'm kind of singular for the most part this week. That's really, I think, a tricky thing to do. I don't think that that's necessarily, I'm not sitting here confidently saying like that's the right way to play a betting card at TPC Sawgrass. It just is a really hard event to cap. I think, like I said, the overseeding that's happened here in the last couple of years, the way that these greens run, where they're not true Bermuda, the fact that, you used to have even fewer drives, the driver off the tee, because these fairways were so firm and fast that you could get yourself in trouble with a good shot. I think that happens a little bit less here than years past. To play a little bit softer, scoring conditions are out there. You got to take advantage of the par fives, because par threes are hard. They're long, probably one of the harder sets of par threes on the tour. And you got to make birdies where you can. So, this is it's just a tricky one. It's a tricky one. And we're dealing with a loaded field as well, but we've seen winners come down the board too, Andy. So even though we have a loaded field, we always have a loaded field here. I know we've kind of shifted, taking more shots in these elevated events at the top because of the loaded fields, but that hasn't always been the case of what's won here. And this place has always had a loaded field.
Yeah. And I mean, we went and we kind of put ourselves up there and said, it's really hard to make a case for someone down the board last week and someone 200 to 1 won. But honestly, you looked at like, because, we get towards the end, it's like, man, are we having an 8-guy playoff? And he would have been the only name in there that wasn't a fairly big name. Like it was just one. And, picking one golfer that far down the board is difficult. It wasn't a spot where I was going to spray a bunch of 200 to 1. So I know some people who did bet Kiriyama, and congrats to them. I didn't see it. And I'm kind of the same mind this week. This is tougher. I mean, this is a tougher place to play. I think it does kind of, I don't want to say reward because it punishes everyone, but it is a spot where it's built for the best players. It's going to be difficult. And, like we already talked about, you can't overpower the course. I pulled up Ron's preview. There's something I wanted to mention. It was the third fewest number of drives over 300 yards at only 23%. The driving distance well below tour average here. It's just, it absolutely takes the longer drivers out of it. And I know the move, Ryan mentioned this used to be in May. Now it's in March. It's slightly different from an agronomical standpoint, whereas the fairways don't run as fast, which was kind of an issue too. If you tried to overpower it, and you would find hey, there's a really good tee shot that's going to bounce into a damn lake because it's just running so fast. So that takes away a little of that, but it's still not a place where you can bomb and gouge. So it's going to be heavy approach, like always, heavy long iron approach, heavy, once you're finding the greens, not screwing up a longer putt, because 3-putt avoidance is huge on fast greens like this. If you can't lag putt normally, you're going to have a hell of a time here because these run quick, and, saving par is awful hard when you're 3-putting.
Yeah. 3-putting here, you're in trouble because these are actually not very big greens either. So you shouldn't have a bunch of opportunities like last week where lag putting really came into play. It basically felt like a lag putting contest on Sunday, and Kiriyama did a hell of a job doing that. So, the familiar names at the top, and you mentioned too, like even the distribution of approach, Andy, is just like, there's not anything to like pinpoint, where sometimes we're like, you just don't have a lot of short irons in your hand this week, or like, no, everything's kind of in the 150, 175, 150 to 200 bucket. Like, it's fairly even here. There's, a few spots where, shorter irons do come into play, where, bodes well for JT, who we know is, played really well here. We've seen that same thing with a Tom Kim, where people think that this is a nice profile course for him, but you are going to get into the 200 to 250 plus bucket at a fairly normal rate as well. So you can't even really hone in on specific proximity ranges. It just is, I think, broad brush approach across the board. Just really hard to find an edge in narrowing that down as well. So in terms of modeling this week, it's just really, really, I don't know, I think minimal. Keep it as simple as possible. Approach. I think bogey avoidance matters because that's going to speak to combination of staying out of the water, maybe staying out of the bunkers. Scoring on the par fives makes a big difference. You're going to have to scramble because these are smaller greens that are harder to hold. So you got to be able to figure it out. I mentioned the bunker green as well. Putting at that
I think
20-foot range is going to make the difference here.
Some of that 3-putt avoidance too is just, I mean, you might see stuff scoot off the green. Like it might be putt, scramble, putt. Like it's like you said, it's hard to end up with an 80-foot lag putt when these greens are so small. But there are spots where it's like these greens are going to struggle to hold putts. I mean, and we saw, God forsake, we see the weather we saw last year, but it's not out of the question. Like we're still in Florida, the weather can still get pretty nasty here. So, yeah, bogey avoidance was super high for me. I used a lot of the stuff I like to use for driving. It's when driving distance isn't key. With the good drives gains, the fairways gain, missing left and right. But obviously approach and greens and regulation huge. But like you said, opportunities gains, bogey avoiding, and just par 5 efficiency, because there's not a ton of places to score, and you do have to. It's not going to be one of those where all the scoring is going to come on the par 5s. They're not easy by any means, but you're going to need to give yourself some birdie looks in these par 5s if you want to compete.
Love it. Apologies in advance. Again, I have 1998 internet somehow. So if I'm lagging or if I'm freezing or if, Andy's going to jump in and talk over on top of me because I don't know what the hell's going on. Find folks over at AT&T.
Goddamn Chicago. I blame Lori. She's on her way out.
She's on her way out.
I still blame her. Yeah, I still blame her. So
it's a popular take around these parts. So we don't have our defending champ. We do not have Cam Smith, unfortunately, because of Liv, which is unfortunate. He was pretty terrific here last year, and would be a tremendous defending champ. Feels like a great place for him to do what he does, because this takes a little bit of everything. You do need some magic beans here. Let's start at the top. We are looking at the familiar names. Depending on where you are, Rory, Scotty, and Rahm are your top 3. Different prices, but basically all around 10, 9, 10, 11 for most of those guys. I kind of feel like we just have to start there. We talk about the top of the board. There definitely is a next tier at the top of the board, but they have somewhat separated themselves. Are we going there at all this week, Andy?
I mean, 2/3 of the top of the board was right there last week.
Yeah.
But again, if you said like, hey, I have Rahm, Rory, and Scotty all pretty similar, and you say, well, I'll take Rahm. It looked good for a day.
Sure
but
did.
I mean, he was nowhere near competitive. So how do you choose between the 3? I don't know if you have anything to say about like how to differentiate the top 3. I don't think I can, as far as, Rory is a distance guy, but it's not like the other 2 are short off the tee, and Rory's iron play has been pretty pure. Everything about obviously he's played very well. He won over on the DP already this year. Rahm's won, Scotty's won. Like, I don't know what the differentiating factor here is. Like, if you made me take one of the 3 guys, I'd just take the one with the longest odds. I don't have something like, I think these prices are off by 10% for one of these 3 golfers. Like, it's probably pretty close to where it needs to be. And like, again, if you wanted to make me bet into the market at the top, I'd probably like Rahm is longer of the 3 some places. I guess I'd have to shop around because they're all pretty close to 10-1. And I guess I'll just be avoiding that spot again. I hate it. I hate taking, like guys that are probably implied to win. Like 30% of these tournaments, one of those guys win, and I'm just going to avoid that and try to find some winners in the other 70%, I guess.
Yeah, took a shot last week with Rory, and he got in the mix, obviously, which is a good place to be. But yeah, I mean, you feel like a moron pretty frequently when these guys are just always around. They're just always going to be around. So to your point, find if you had an inkling, it's really hard, I think, to differentiate. I would say maybe Rahm and Scotty, even though Rory has won this recently, Rahm and Scotty tend to be the safer drivers in terms of good drives gained, fairways, driving accuracy. So I would probably lean one of those guys, and looking at the best odds that you can find would probably be my approach. But I'm also skipping that tier and like a jackass moving down to some of the guys in the next tier as well. It's a pretty loaded tier. I've bet Cantley here multiple times over the last 5 years unsuccessfully, multiple miscuts in there. Justin Thomas was a winner for me here a couple of years ago. A fantastic event, getting caught in the bad weather wave. And he has been, we saw last year, even at the PGA at Southern Hills. He is a terrific bad weather golfer. He can probably do as much in terms of being able to move it and shot shape it both ways and anyone on this tour. And that was going to serve him well here. You hear players talk about that being important here. And JT can definitely do that. Then you kind of get into this Homa, Morikawa, Hovland, who also, tasted a little bit of Sunday smoke and couldn't close it at API. Tony Finau, it's a majority of the guys that are under 30. Again, this is a pretty big tier, but any of those guys, and I guess the next spot, catch your eye.
Yeah, that's my whole damn card. I'm not going long again. If I wanted to go long, like some guys that always end up in the spot, I'm just jumping ahead to like bombs. We'll talk about some bombs that I actually like, because I feel I've picked a few guys that have placed well as far as like betting a big old long shot into a top 40, top 30 market. We'll get to that. But like Alex Smalley isn't playing well enough. Like he fits the course, good irons, but like his form is just shit. Like I'm not gonna bet a big old price on him. Will Gordon, kind of the same thing. A lot of the names that keep popping up in those spots, the Griffin, Yager, Lashley, Putnam, Buckley, Grillo, like all those big Hadwin, even like, and again, he's a winner on tour at one point. It's very good, but like even Tom Hoagie, I don't trust him enough with this kind of stacked field, because this middle class is thick. Like you have the big three, and that's a lot of win equity soaked up by those guys. But like, if you say like 30% of the time it's won by one of the big, the big three, which is actually a little high, because you should be going something like 1 divided by 11. So probably like 25 to 28% of the time. I'm going to round it up to 30 because I don't care. Like of the rest of those 70% of the tournaments, how many times is that Cantley, Homa, Thomas, Morikawa, Schauffele, Hovland, Dave, Finau, Spieth, Zal, Hatton, Young, Tom Kim, Fitzpatrick, Sung Jae Im? I'm naming major winners. I'm naming winners on tour this year. Like there's the next like 15 guys soak up so much of that win equity. And again, it's going to be hard to find some long shots here. I can make some cases for those, but like short list right off the bat was probably for me Hovland. I liked how he played last week despite some long-term, inconsistency in the irons and obviously chipping. I didn't play Xander last week, but I have him eyed up this week because he's a little deeper than some of the other prices. And then, I mean, is Jason Day one we're going to feel dumb not having like a Masters ticket on? Like that's another one too, where you look at the form and he's just kind of on the ascension. He's playing how he used to play, and he's just played really good golf lately. And the short-ish term like in my form model, which is more tilted towards long term, but it takes into short term form. He's crept his way into the top 10 now, and he's definitely a good enough irons player, a decent enough course fit here where being over 30 to 1 is probably a bet for me too. And I guess my favorite, and I would bet him at 25, I think. And the prices are higher than this, is Tony Finau. Like Tony Finau, that was my first click. That's first bet, all I want. It's just a really good fit, really good golfer. The form is obviously high enough. The iron play, greens and regulations, top 5 over a decent enough sample size. And when I put everything in for my course fit model, he was number 1. So number one with the bullet, I'd bet him down to 25, but you can get better prices than that for sure.
We are united across the board. I played that first thing Monday morning as well. I know Ron played that. There are 28s still out there. If you have bet Chris, 31, 51. Pinnacle's got a 30 as well, but domestic wise, there are multiple books with 28 still on Tony. So yeah, you mentioned that, like, it's just kind of all there. It all checks a lot of boxes, even though the course history has not been great. But like, I just don't think it matters at all this week. I don't.
No,
Even
you
Xander,
mentioned that off the top. You said like this hasn't been a place where course history has mattered all that much.
not even a little bit. Like Xander, second here in his debut, he's got 3 straight miscuts ever since. Like, I don't know. Like there's no way you can tell me that Xander can't play this course tremendously well. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Finau's course history is very, very similar. So yeah, Finau was my first in terms of reshuffling. First click there. I got down early. We bet if you were not a subscriber, this is an opportunity for you to feel a little FOMO. We got 46 on Homa during the week of the Farmers. So he was out, like, getting close to closing the door on the Farmers. This was one of those places, other than other majors, that had some early odds, and I grabbed a 46 on Max, just knowing that it's a terrible number, and we were kind of getting away from anything over 40 for Max across the board, regardless of the course, regardless of West Coast, East Coast, whatever it is. And obviously, seeing him, open here for the most part at 20 or shorter feels like a pretty good early number there too. I also fired on Morikawa. At the same time I did Finau, 28. Looks like there are 25s still out there if you're looking to get down on Morikawa. Just a bell we've rung a lot here, and for all the same reasons. Probably in terms of the elite guys, he lacks a little bit of distance, but he just paints fairways, and we know that the ball striking is tremendous. I feel good about the putting gains, and like, he's just been knocking on the door too much to not get home. And God, you just feel pot committed at a certain point where you feel like, I've been on this guy for a reason. This still feels like a great fit for him. We know fairways matter. I got to go back to Morikawa. So in terms of things that are still out there, Finau and Morikawa were my shots at the top of the board.
Yeah, I bet a 33 on Finau. Like, that one's in the account. I'm happy that that's still available if you're an offshore, if you're a filthy offshore player like me, and you can get on Bet Online. But like you said, even Bet Chris is 31. There's 30s at DraftKings. Like, like I said, I would have him at Morikawa's price or better. I think he's bettable down to 25 to 1. Xander. Now, normally you're a Xander guy, and this is another one too where he's going to be 25 at a lot of places, but I found another spot where I can get Xander at 30. I have him again, like the form top 10, greens and regulation, iron play, approach, everything else top 10. Course fit very high, and there's another one where I'm not even looking at. I'm not looking at any sort of course history at this one. I did look a little at comp courses or places where you do need to be accurate off the tee. I have him plenty high there. I can't. I probably can't quit him. I've never had much luck. I think the only bet I've ever won on Xander was, again, I've mentioned this, like a 2-1 or plus. It was like plus 250, and it was any American to win the gold medal at the Olympics, and that was basically like getting win equity plus like all my Morikawa plus some other win equity with the other guys, and not exactly how I pictured winning that bet, but I can never get this guy right. So are you on him or off him? And tell me.
I'm always good with someone being on him. He's not like off for me. I'll have finishing position bets. I feel like we might get some value because you might see some course history baked into some of that stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
This is again, I just don't think it matters. Again, he showed that he could play here. He got a second the first time out. So he got caught in the bad weather. And so like, I just don't think that matters a whole lot. So he just doesn't do anything poorly. We talked about it last week. We were looking at API, and it's like, we don't always classify him when we're talking about elite iron players. He just is. He is tremendous in short irons, which matter here, long irons, which matter here from the rough. He's one of the best in terms of like strokes gained on approach from 150 plus. Are we going to have a lot of those here this week? So yeah, there's just no reason to not be on Xander. He was in the mix a little bit heading into Saturday and then just had a really bad weekend. But yeah, no problem. I think you might get a little bit of discount in the matchup field. So didn't bet him outright. Again, I told myself I'm going light here because I need to go light here every year. I always have it on my notes. I bet 3 futures, early outrights, and then fired 4 on the board Monday morning. So it's like not a light card. 7 outrights is heavier than I typically have. So he is not on the card, but no problem with him being on anyone's.
Yeah, I'm not as light as I have been in weeks past. I feel like I've done a few weeks where I've only had 2 or 3. I'm gonna likely have 5 here. It's just gonna be a little more price shopping for me. But Xander, another one where I got it at 30. I think that should be someone who's down in the Morikawa range, so getting a little bit of a discount. And then Victor Hovland, more so, I don't know. Do you ever feel like you bet someone and they played well and didn't win, and then you just go back to the well? That's because, like I mentioned, it's not the same course. It's tougher. The field's pretty similar, though. But the fact that we saw a little bit of luck. I mean, to be fair, it's like the luck counteracts the stupidity and the bad ideas. Like, I feel like it evened out, and if he just played some normal golf for once, like Hovland would win or win more. But there's another price here where it's above 30 for me at Chris, and I did take some Victor Hovland. He was somebody I bet last week. It was funny too, going in to the final round. I believe he was tied for the lead. I had no faith in that cashing. And it wasn't just because like it was Victor Hovland. There are just so many big names. Like, it's one thing to be tied for the lead with like a 4-shot gap. I mean, but the chasers and as many chasers there were at like -7, it was like, if this happens, it happens. I'll be happy. But man, I'm not putting much faith in Victor. So hopefully just finds that luck off the fairway, out of the bunkers, chips a little better, and finds himself in the same position again, because it's a similar number, I suppose, but I bet him at 32 over at Chris. So that's it's probably somebody I'm going to play down in these events year after year if he continues to have this kind of skill set that he's looking right now. Obviously, irons play. I do like a combined irons metric where I take in some proximity, I take in a SG approach, I take in greens and regulation. I take in some different proximity ranges based on like the event and kind of the buckets that we're going to be falling into the most, and do a combined one. He didn't grade out as good as some of these other guys, obviously, but the rest of the game kind of is there. The form obviously is fine, and the course fit was high enough that I played him here too. And it's kind of just playing some hot hand as well.
Yeah, took an aggressive line. I don't know if that was 14 or 15, found the water. Because, no one really ran away with anything on Sunday. It was there for him to take, even though he wasn't playing particularly sharp. So no problem going back there. He was on the card last week too, just not back for me this week. Again, I took a couple shots. I mentioned the max 46. That was long gone, obviously. Also early or late January, took Tom Kim here and Will Zalatoris. Both were 36. Both are not far off of what's available now. Like, Zalatoris is still 35 on DraftKings. So I thought what's happened in some other places is what would happen. So 36 on Zal was not necessarily, it's again, better than anything else out there. So I feel like that's still a decent number. Just whatever, man. Zalatoris is my good Aaron Wise. We just ball striking anytime approach is really prominent piece of the puzzle. I think we have to consider Zalatoris. So here we are. Tom Kim has not been playing particularly well, but we haven't really been in a stretch of Tom Kim courses, right? Like, they have been places where, you need distance at API, you need distance at the Genesis, you need distance at Farmers. And, he hasn't really had strong finishes comparatively. And when we think about where he played well last year at the Wyndham and Travelers and some others, like those are courses where he just could find fairways and get it done on the approach, and he ran hot with the putter. So this feels like a Tom Kim type of track year in and year out moving forward. Poor man's Colin Morikawa in terms of the skill set, I think. So I got Tom Kim at 36. That is not the best of the number for sure. That market has obviously been impacted by the recent form. 40s are still out there. MGM, 42 on Chris, 37 on FanDuel. Obviously, I'm fine with holding with my 36. Again, like he hasn't been particularly good, but I feel like this is a better fit than anything he's seen in the last month plus.
Yeah, I was hoping he made the short list, didn't make the cut for me. Just can't bet everybody. I was hoping for more of a discount because of the poor form. I was hoping for 50. Didn't get it. The best price right now is like a 44, which is close, real close to maybe playing a little bit of a FOMO pick on him. But yeah, just poor form, tough course. First time through some of these places for him, and it's such a tough field that I'd want 50 on Tom Kim if I to add to the card, because I think if I didn't already have 4 or 5 guys, I'd give it a lot more consideration. Was close on him. Zal, same thing, pretty close. Kind of missed some of the numbers. I think you can maybe get what did you say the best Zalatoris price currently was? I think 30, 33 maybe. 37 at Chris. Whoa.
35 on DraftKings domestically. Still a really good number.
40 on Bet Online. God, I'm gonna have like 7 outright, Sammy.
I think it's honestly kind of the way to play the week. I think that I love my degenerate like T40 parlays. They're just not going to be involved for me this week. It's just so easy for these top guys to miss cuts. It's just such a tricky play. So similar to me for what I did a lot last week with API. Part of that was travel and vacation, but I think just sprinkling a little bit more outright wise is probably, I don't know, it's not a bad way to go this week, to be honest. It's just really hard to cap finishing positions because literally anything's on the table.
Yeah, and Sal just played poorly last week too. I had him in a matchup versus someone that was not. None of my matchups were particularly close. I went 2-1, and the 2 that won cashed on the cut line pretty easily, and the one that lost was Zal just never competing with Cam Young. And that was kind of a 5-stroke lead the whole time. So I would like to see a little better play at the API because it's not a true comp course, but the comp can be made for the tee shot play.
Sure.
Like very similar to that. And that is why I'll probably be going with Tyrrell Hatton. You can find 40s, maybe 50s if you shop around. I still haven't actually bet this. I'm waiting for the best price. I'm kind of putting some feelers out there. I might have to bet this at a legal book to get the best of the best, but it was another spot where I bet against him at the Waste Management. It didn't work out. A lot of it. He played really good, but also I bet against him with Shane Lowry, who is just absolute dog shit right now. So kind of another one of those matchups that lost by 100 strokes, which doesn't cost anymore. It's the same amount of money you lose. So at least it's just injury to your pride. But the way he did it there, and I know way different course in Arizona compared to the Florida swing, but he's just been so good tee to green. And the fact that he did it last week again, gaining almost 5 strokes off the tee, and kind of a comp course where you have to use some of the same tactics off the tee again. So tee to green gained 7 strokes last week, finished 4th at the API. Like, if he putts okay and scrambles, at a decent level, he's top 10ing this, and you can probably find a 50 if you poke around enough. I'm annoyed that I'm finding only 40 as my best price right now, but he has been bet down at Chris. He's 30 at Chris. I guess I'll have to open 3 more books here to see what else we got. The annoying thing is a lot of these places just copy each other, and you don't end up with a lot of differentiation. I gotta get God, what's the one that just had a mess? Was it PointsBet this week that just was all over the place?
We got to get you in the Monday morning thing, because Monday morning I think is the only time where you do have some differentiators before they all kind of fold in on each other. Yeah. You do see some pretty wild discrepancies in terms of openers. But yeah, domestically, I'm looking at a 35 for Hatton on DraftKings is the best of the bunch. There are 30s in some spots. Yeah, 35. So I like it. If I didn't have so many, to be honest, if I hadn't fired, futures on Zal or Tom Kim, like Hat and I like total driving, which I think matters. And total driving is
Yep.
kind of a noisy stat in terms, it's just basically combining distance and accuracy rankings. So it's definitely not a perfect stat, but he's really good. I think he's tied for the lead, actually. So he's going to find fairways that matters here, has enough distance to hang. We know he's tremendous with long irons. That's why he continues to pop at API. He's a really good golfer that we just don't see enough for, us to be, a guy that we are always locked in because he plays a lot on the DP World Tour. But yeah, he's a really good play, and I like the number quite a bit, still even at 35.
Yeah, I found a 40. I'm gonna add that right now. I don't think I'm gonna find anything better. Like you said, if the domestic numbers are already past that,
Yeah,
1/2 of a unit on all of them, all bet the same this week. If anyone was wondering on that, so those 5, that's probably my card. I'm struggling, very much struggling, not adding Zalatoris and Tom Kim at those prices, 37 and 45 at Chris right now, whereas other places are a lot lower. 40 on Zal at Bet Online, like I mentioned, 40 and 45 on Zal and Tom Kim are awful tempting. I wouldn't blame anybody if you took those, but for me, I think I'm sticking with it. Hatton at 40. Honestly, the 2 at Chris were the exact same price. Day and Hovland were both plus 32.51 because they like to do things like that and have weird numbers. And then Xander at 30, Tony at 33. That's probably the card. And then it's time to move over to matchups for me.
It's a good card. I took 2 more, a little bit longer down the board. I think you've probably seen them. If you haven't seen them, I know sure as shit you can guess one of them.
Oh,
Numbers
God.
collapsed. It is not where it was first thing Monday morning. It was 66. He shouldn't be at 66 anymore. He shouldn't be at 66 here, and the market has fallen in a little bit on that. It's we're down to 40 in some spots, which is short. 41s. Still looks like there's a 50 out there at MGM. He's even 40 at Chris.
Hung Jae?
Nope. We grew up in the same nape of the neck.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank here on who you got then.
Keegs.
Oh God. There's still 40s out there. Let me see where Keegs falls in my pricing. Not that far down. He's never going to, is he? God, this guy.
Been really I think about what he does really well, and he the putting's improved. It's always been putting, but
yeah,
the approach game's great. He finds fairways. He's really good off the tee. He's 5th year last year. We have 3 straight years of 29. It was his worst, but 7th, 16th, 29th, 5th. I think he just does fit what works here, and was in the mix again last weekend. Does it again? He just kind of shows up. Got really hot on Sunday and put himself close to the top 10. Got in the clubhouse, I think T7, T8. So just playing really good golf. And I think he obviously likes the spot. So Keegan, especially if he's going to keep opening at 66, 60, it's just better than that, to be honest. He's not closing the door, obviously. So still cashing losers. But, I just think he's better than 66 at open.
Yeah, I have him in a decent spot for course fit. Some other guys that were high course fit guys for me, a little further down the board. Obviously, Henley, like he is every goddamn week. Yeah. Tom Hoagie, like you mentioned, if you want to take, $10 and put it on a deep shot, you can get Hoagie at triple digit numbers for sure. Obviously, the same with Henley. These should be 100 to 1s or more.
Yep.
Really, really, really want a huge number. David Lipsky. The form sucks, but the fit looks good, and he's like a 400 to 1. I should just look. I'm gonna sort only by my course fits and see if there's some just big old bombs. Smalley, again, the same thing. Horrible form, great fit. Ben Griffin.
Yeah,
decent.
Ben Griffin.
Decent enough form. Iron play isn't there, but the course fit is nice. So I won't add any bombs, but these are some guys maybe to start looking at for top 40. If you want to dig in some of those guys and make a case for yourself to bet them in a top 40 spot or to make the cut on places that have extensive. I think every book should have to list all to make the cut, yes or no, for everybody.
I know.
Give me all of them. Like I want to bet, like, whatever you want to give me on like Ryan Brem to make the cut. Because I think you might be able to find some like super high variance guys if you dug in on that and maybe make some plus EV bets into that market. But for the most part, it's usually just top names.
The last guy that I played is a guy that's been playing really well. I think he's tied with Tyrrell Hatton in terms of total driving so far this season. Played great golf on the West Coast, although he typically does most of his damage in the Southeast, and that is Keith Mitchell. Mitchell at 60 as well, which I think is mostly still available, to be honest. Where's we see where Mitchell's moved a little bit. There's 55 still out there on Mitchell. Just playing really good golf, and I'm not really giving that any weight. But I like how he's playing. I like his fit. If he's gonna find fairways, continue to play the golf he's been playing. Yeah, 13th year last year, missed the cut the year before. Again, that's just kind of the MO of this course. A couple other cuts made here historically. So yeah, Keith Mitchell, that fills out my card. It's a big one, but again, the three futures kind of changed the game for me. I definitely wasn't going to pass on some of these numbers at open on Monday as well. So just kind of we kind of did skip for the most part that mid tier in terms of like, 35s down to 50s for the most part. It's a pretty loaded field as well, but none of those guys are really catching my eye. But we've seen longer.
Yeah, like I can't bet Ricky Fowler. I can't bet Cameron Young here. His skill set is maybe not super set up for the spot, especially at that price. Matthew Fitzpatrick, I still worry a little bit with the injury stuff. Same thing with Spieth grabbing his back. Lowry has played like garbage. Connors is a top 20 play if you really want to play him. I'd say the same thing for Keith. Like, you got a good enough number, whatever, but like Keith Mitchell for me, I'd play a top 20. I like him enough. That's not a bad look. Sahith, a little further down. He's another one I don't hate here. Top 20, and hopefully he does well because I pulled a pretty good Rainmaker on him. By the way, Cal tricked me into playing Rainmakers. Now I'm playing Rainmaker DFS now. I bought so many cards yesterday. The best part was he paid like $2,000 for a pack and got you get like a legend, or you get a Rainmaker card. And it was like Rich Beam.
Oh no,
something horrible. Like, he got some really good ones. He has some really good cards, but there's got to be no worse feeling than paying a lot of money for this, these playable DFS cards and getting. I mean, one of my better ones, like a higher tier card, was Mike Weir. Like, that's not good.
No,
like, he's playing once a year. Can't be using that. So anybody, I mean, DM me if you're looking for a elite Mike Weir card. I've got that for you. So. I'll be
maybe some passionate Canadians watching that just fanboy out.
Or passionate Swedes. I think I pulled every Swedish player. I have Blix, Peterson, Henrik, like every Swedish player I have as well. So
as a half Canuck left-hander, I definitely love myself some Mike Weir back in the day. So I'm not gonna lie. But,
yeah, he's a very good golfer in 1994.
Yeah. Like, terrific. Yeah.
I know the best part is it has these stats for each golfer, and it's like handedness left, which is fun, but rookie status, no. But yeah. Thanks for letting me know. Mike Weir, not a rookie. He turned pro when I was in like second grade, guys. So with that, yeah. Again, get in the Discord if you really want to get some of this stuff early. Ryan and Ron are great about posting early numbers on Sunday and Mondays. A lot of that, not a lot of it, almost all of it moves your way for sure. You guys are great at picking off the early numbers. And not only that, before with the majors and the fifth major like this, you're going to see them picking off early numbers like you were able to with the Max Homa. I mean, the best Max Homa number right now is what?
20.
20?
Yep.
And you guys got him at 46 a few weeks back. That's stuff you can turn on your notifications for if you're in the members Discord right now, because it is the 49th playing of the players. Full year memberships are $49 off. Just go to betsportsgolf.com. You can also take advantage of just a monthly sub if you want to grab some of that as well. Just try it out. But the $49 off will be throughout the week. If you have any questions on that, DM me at AndyMSFW. He's Ryan Noonan at RY Noonan on the Twitter. I'll catch you guys next week. And if you're on the YouTube, hit the thumbs up, guys.
Good luck, everyone.
Do, 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 do.